Hey there, I'm Brant Zip at Crocker Farm Auction, and we got our big fall 2019 auction coming up. So as usual, we're just going through some of the lots here and kind of highlighting some things and just kind of giving you a good sense of what these things actually look like in person, which is a great benefit of doing these videos. We've always felt. So anyway, this is a great example of that because it's kind of hard to get a sense of the size of this jar from the photos, in my opinion. It's a pretty big pot, and it's the largest pot known by a mystery potter who produced what could be considered one of the very best bodies of work of any period American stoneware potter. The potter who made this exact same jar, is the exact same one who produced the Elizabeth Crane Punch Bowl at the Museum of American Folk Art. He produced the wonderful Henry Edison flask that is in the Weitzman collection at the New York State Museum. He produced a number of other notable works, one of which was a great little ring flask that we sold in March, inscribed with the name Peter Machette. And he clearly had just an almost unparalleled command of incised decoration, and he also had the ability to throw large vessels, clearly, because for instance we sold a very large jug of his at one point that I would say was notably larger than any other incised jugs, at least we typically handle. When I say that he was very proficient at incised decoration, you can see that on this piece with this wonderful large incised, like abstract floral design. The incised design he's probably best known for is the incised fish in the bottom of the Crane Punch Bowl that's at the Folk Art Museum. If you're not familiar with that piece or the Edison flask, I would try to look those up on the internet because they're key examples of American stoneware. And this pot really complements those examples and would be worthy of any museum collection. Shows really well in person size-wise, but also that's augmented by these large scalloped handles, which have just these really neat, like funky scallops in them, which you rarely see on American stoneware, but do sometimes from this time period. Very rarely though. This potter, it's unclear who this was, and so this has been kind of a project of mine. I think I talked about this a little when I was showing off the Machette flask earlier this year, is to try to figure out who this potter was. So for instance, just like to give you some insight into that, one theory has been that Henry Remy made these, because Henry Remy also, when he came to Baltimore, made fantastic incised examples of American stoneware, just really wild things. So it's a good guess, but unfortunately, these pieces all have very distinct handwriting on them. And the handwriting does not match Henry Remy's handwriting, which is likewise distinct. So the best guess so far is that it's a member of the Crolius family. And as I get into the history of this object and how it's one of the most kind of steeped in history of early America that we've ever handled, I can also talk briefly about how the Crolius family was likewise involved in the early founding of America. But just to talk about the inscriptions on this piece, it's inscribed just like these other pieces I've highlighted so far. It's inscribed under this handle in that well-known handwriting I talked about, C. Atterbury. I'm going to talk about who C. Atterbury is in a second, but it's also dated underneath the other handle, and that date is August 24th, 1807. And as far as I can tell, the dates on these pieces do not necessarily correspond to any remarkable dates, either generally or specific to the people involved. So while they might be commemorative and made like after. So this piece could post date 1807, and 1807 could be a commemorative date, August 24th, 1807. My guess is that it was made on August 24th, 1807. And so I think that's how it is on all these pieces. So the Crane Punch Bowl has an 1811 date, I believe. Yeah, I'm just looking here to make sure that I was correct. Yeah, it's an 1811 date. That was probably made in 1811. At any rate, C. Atterbury is Catherine Atterbury. She was born Catherine Boudinot and married Louis Atterbury, who was an English-born merchant who was the nephew of Benjamin Bakewell, the very famous Pittsburgh glass magnate. He had emigrated to America and married her in 1803, and she was from Newark. And it's notable that the names you see on these pieces are all for people who live kind of near Newark. And it's also notable that the Crolius family, during the Revolution, the place they retreated to when Manhattan was taken over by the British was New Jersey. So they also go out to New Jersey, actually to a place called Bound Brook, which is in Somerset County, New Jersey. And then William Crolius, Clarkson's brother, actually was located in Newark for a time, but that would predate the making of this vessel by a long time. But there's some sense that the Crolius family has something to do with these pieces. The thing about Catherine Atterbury and her family is that her family, like the Croliuses, William that I just mentioned and his brother John Crolius Jr. both fought in the Revolution, and the entire Crolius family was extremely patriotic. And so it's notable that Catherine Atterbury's family, the Boudinots, were also extremely patriotic, really high-level patriots from New Jersey. So her father, Elisha Boudinot, falls into that category and was involved in various ways, helping to facilitate the patriot cause. Her uncle, Elias Boudinot, was actually the president of the Continental Congress, and he held that position for a year, during which the war ended. So he was an important guy. The Boudinot family knew George Washington. There's one or two letters that are still in existence that Washington wrote to Catherine Atterbury's father. But what's really kind of cool is that Atterbury herself actually had a brush with Washington that she talked about her entire life. When she was 8 years old, she was at a celebration in New York City, probably for Washington's inauguration, and she had trouble seeing a balloon that was being hoisted up or lifted into the air along with the fireworks, and Washington actually lifted her upon his shoulders to give her a better view of the balloon and the fireworks and everything. So that's just wild to think that this jar was made for someone who actually interacted with George Washington in that way. Catherine Atterbury's aunt, Annis Atterbury Stockton, was actually a somewhat notable early American poet who traded correspondence with Washington and wrote poems to him. And so this family is just like, it doesn't really get any more, these people as a family could not really have been any more involved with the founding of America than they were. And so to think, to see that in this object is just really a remarkable thing. I mean, I would say rarely have we, if ever, have we had a piece of stoneware that is so connected to the earliest history of America as this jar is. And we're just thrilled to offer it.